invite the mission panel of speakers to come up and it's gonna stand right here. And when it's ready. So, yeah.
Testing. Okay. Hello, I will be discussing about my reflection of the South African mission trip, but I would like to start off with that it's a privilege to be able to go to South Africa and come back to speak about my experience. There are many contraceptions or misconceptions about Africa that they are dirty, poor, and impoverished. Instead of educating ourselves about the reality and the truth, we trust that one story because that's what the media and what people feed us. We have to acknowledge that we have the power to change the narrative and broaden our perspective on the people and the environment in which we live. Before going to South Africa, I had a single story. I went to Ghana in the 7th grade and I thought that, yeah, Ghana and South Africa are like the same thing, but they're not, because Africa is such a diverse place and there are so many regions that are similar yet very distinct. Instead of relying solely on a perspective of my peers or drawing conclusions from them, I need to have done my own research to understand the differences between different African places. One tale might lead us astray because it prevents us from understanding reality and causes us to follow our own beliefs. This is the dangers of a single story. Moreover, I was able to discover the reality for South African children when I was there. I was able to see them going to school, living in the present moment, but then having to go back to the reality, their harsh reality of going back to their squatter homes. I kept thinking to myself, I'm so privileged to be here, so privileged. I was able to take showers while others would do anything for a drop of water on their body. That's a privilege. It's a privilege to be able to be fed breakfast, lunch, and dinner when people scrape by with just one meal a day. That's a privilege. This trip made me step back and recognize that you must be self-aware about your actions and acknowledge what your privilege is. To not educate yourself when you have the tools and the technology to do so is a privilege. That's why the single story is as harmful as it is. We have the accessibility to research and gain more knowledge about things we are unaware about, but we choose not to. My call to action is that we must work on our inner lives in order to change the outer world to create a better one. Change will never occur if we as people don't work together, since we are stronger as a collective. Thank you.
Though many experiences on this trip were impactful, I'd like to take a moment to appreciate and discuss the impact of two of them. The first was District 6. District 6 was a predominantly colored district up until the 1960s when it was declared a whites-only area. Over the course of almost 2 decades, over 60,000 people were forcibly moved. The buildings were bulldozed, and although there were plans to redevelop the area, international and local pressure made this difficult for the government. Thus, much of the seized land remained undeveloped. The residents were moved to an area about 25 kilometers away called the Cape Flats. This area consisted of housing complexes, police stations, schools, etc., but had little to no public gathering spaces, parks, or any community centers. We took a walk along a major road, and our guide pointed out where different landmarks used to be. He lived in District 6 before apartheid and remembers the community that used to live there. After our walk, he took us to the District 6 Museum and provided context for everything we saw inside. The museum itself was incredibly impactful, as the first thing you see when you walk in is a huge map on the floor of what District 6 used to look like. The walls were covered in photos, each with a plaque explaining the context in which they were taken. As we walked through the museum, one thing kept repeating in my head: 60,000. How is it possible to cause this much displacement and suffering in the name of any cause? This sentiment stuck with me for the rest of the trip. The other experience I want to highlight has a much more hopeful message. This was the soccer ministry. Now, at first, this seemed like a very strange combination. Soccer and faith. But the more we spoke with the people running the program, the more sense it made. What is faith but a gathering of disparate peoples united in belief? What is soccer but a group of different people with different life experiences putting aside their differences to cooperate and play a game? The idea behind the soccer ministry was that the biggest problem in the community was not poverty or violence, but fatherlessness. Now, I initially didn't understand what this meant. But the more I listened, the more I could see what they meant. Many children in the poorest communities do not have a father figure at all. And most are raised by the community instead of by their individual parents. With few role models or disciplinarians around, they stray to other groups to give them a sense of purpose. Boys tend to join gangs, while girls tend to become pregnant in their teens. The goal of the soccer ministry is to give children and teens a place to belong, an adult they feel they can come to if they need help, a father figure in the form of their coach, and a sense of community. The soccer ministry aims to intervene in the lives of these children at around the age of 7, and children and teens can join late. But while children and teens can join later, it's most effective to start around 7, as this has the best results in preventing the aforementioned gangs and pregnancies. These two experiences stuck to me for many reasons, but one of the most interesting ways they stuck with me was how they seemed to create one continuous story. District 6 was a tragedy, leading to the widespread destruction of history and the forced relocations of tens of thousands of people. This was the displacement. The soccer ministry, on the other hand, was groups of people seeing the issues in their communities, vastly affected by the displacement of apartheid, and actively trying to find a sustainable solution to help these communities. This was the healing. These together created a narrative that is incomplete, yet compelling all the same.
During our time in South Africa, we had the privilege of attending a local church service, and it was an experience I'll never forget. The congregation welcomed us with open arms, clearly excited to have us there. We started by introducing ourselves, and soon we were all singing together, which was a joyful and uplifting experience. One part of the service that really stood out to me, a few people went up and they shared some personal stories from their week and how they'd seen God work in their lives. One story in particular was truly inspiring. A woman talked about how she had been diagnosed with cancer and went in for a checkup. To her amazement, the doctor told her that there was no trace of cancer anymore. She shared this incredible news with the others in the waiting room, only to find out they had all received the same diagnosis. They were all cancer-free. Hearing this story was incredibly moving, and it was a powerful reminder of the strength of faith in the community. After the service, we joined everyone for a meal of bread and soup. It was a great opportunity to chat with people from the church and talk about the differences and similarities between our cultures. One of their favorite conversation starters was American politics. They seemed to know a lot more than I knew about American politics. One of the most inspiring things, though, about our visit was seeing how deeply faith influences the lives of the people there. No matter the challenges they face, they remain happy and hopeful, relying on their faith in God to get them through tough times. This strong sense of faith also seems to make them incredibly welcoming to everyone they meet. It's such a contrast to how things can be in America, where it's not uncommon to wave and smile at someone and get a cold response. In South Africa, it felt completely normal to greet everyone with a smile or a wave, and it was refreshing to be in a place where warmth and kindness were just a part of everyday life. Hein and his wife truly made us feel at home and helped us in so many ways. They were also two of the most forgiving people I have ever met. Our group had some culture shock once we got there, which led to certain things being interpreted in a disrespectful manner that we honestly had no idea, could come off that way. Like being loud, or the back and forth banter with one another, just common things that we were so used to doing around each other. But everyone there was so forgiving, and they were so kind, and were able to let us know in such a respectful and kind, understanding manner. And they were helping us navigate in an understanding way and realize those habits. And we couldn't have asked for better leaders and lifelong friends.
While in South Africa, one of our projects was helping an after-school camp for elementary and middle school children. Since it's winter in South Africa right now, the kids go to school as usual during the day. After school, they came to a large building. This building was surrounded by portable classrooms, making it easy to teach them in separate spaces. Nearby, there was also a playground where the kids could enjoy some outdoor fun. On the first day that we were there, our main job was to introduce ourselves and get to know the kids. We moved around from table to table, chatting with kids to learn about their interests and start building a connection with them. These kids were very curious about the way we spoke and acted because it was very different from what they were used to. Over the next 2 weeks, we got to know these kids and their stories. The leader of the children's camp was a middle-aged man from Zimbabwe. All the children adored and respected him. He knew over 100 kids by name. He taught the kids about responsibility and leadership. What amazed me the most was when it was time to transition, he called upon the leaders. I was expecting him to be talking to adults, but the leaders he was talking to were anywhere from 7 to 12 years of age. That day, I learned that leaders were made and not born. In the book that we read, Trevor Noah, he said people love to say, give a man a fish and he'll eat for a day, but teach a man a fish and he'll eat for a lifetime. Katani was an incredible example of teaching children to fish and supporting their education, and being a father to fatherless children. Something that makes me think about my role of how I can impact others is use my privilege to mentor kids to be the next generation of leaders. I've also learned that many want to fish but have no fishing pole. Some kids don't have a fishing pole. Equality and equity aren't the same things. When I go to college, I plan to be involved or start a club that's working towards hearing everyone's voice and racial equity.
I just wanted to thank you so much for supporting our trip. There were many points where we felt our Southman family with us. This experience took me so far out of everyday life and created many points of deep reflection and long conversations. So here were a few for me. To resist the single story. If you want to explore this further, we watched an excellent TED Talk together on the danger of a single story by Chimamanda Adichie. And she explains, as you've heard, that we are each more than one circumstance or feature. And she says that the danger in a single story and the stereotype that it creates is that it isn't untrue, but it is incomplete. So over time, that one story then becomes the only story for both the teller and the subjects. The country of South Africa, through its history of colonialism and apartheid, is at the highest level of inequity in the world. Poverty is extreme, expansive, and exists alongside an abundance of wealth. In a recent report, the World Bank commented that the belief is that the rich are being rewarded for taking risks, having superior skills, hard work, and an unusual determination. And continues, but if wealth were a result of hard work, African women would be the richest people on the planet. So the continuation of that first story of poverty is that many do experience utter devastation, and alongside that, have developed incredible resilience, strong community, tenacity of spirit, creativity for survival, and desire for joy and connection. This was really impactful to see such complexity in person. At the soccer ministry we visited, they trained soccer coaches to work in a community that's considered the murder capital of the world. Long-term persecution, displacement, lack of identity, lack of work, and like mentioned, the lack of father figures funnel naturally into gang violence. The soccer coaching, however, was broad, trauma-informed, and highly applicable in both sport and life, and had elements like, be where your feet are. It's not about me. Spot the gap, close the gap. Intentionality. And posed a powerful question of, What breaks your heart in your community? What will you do about it? It's impressive to see the focused aid that the United States government offers South Africa for impact toward health, education, environment, a digital economy, governance, and human rights. As we got to drive through thriving coastal areas with solid infrastructure, roads, manufacturing, and businesses, we saw the lasting impact of investing in change and economic development. And again, yet more complexity. We saw that in just a handful of years, an entire government could move away from apartheid. However, you cannot as easily undo the social constructs, beliefs, and deep divisions that had been developed to support it. Lastly, we got to be witness to the power of a few passionate people. At the food bank, we chopped, peeled, and packaged food. We then come to understand that the amount of food that the 18 of us prepared, which was a great deal, is typically done by 3 women every day who work as fast as they can to prepare as much as they can to feed as many as they can each day. This trip will have a lasting impact on me. I'm committed to learning more about current political policies and staying invested in systemic solutions as they develop, to vote, and to remember that there is always something you can do or someone to support, like serving food at Blanchet House, taking part in the Christmas basket program at Vos Elementary School down the street, the dozens of other meaningful mission projects of our church, but also a neighbor, a friend, and to keep asking myself and others, what breaks your heart? What will you do about it?
During the trip in South Africa, we got to see a lot of disparity. I think it's the one country in the world that has the biggest gap between rich and poor. We saw a lot of hope. We saw a lot of despair, and in the midst of that, we were forced to ask ourselves, like, are we living in the same world? We traveled 10,000 plus miles, each of us, different groups, some longer than others. And the one thing that kept going through my mind was, whatever your hands find, do it with all your might. That was the story of Katani, not from South Africa, still doesn't have a status to work in South Africa, yet dedicating his life to make sure that fatherless children have a place to want to have one meal a day, to play, to do homework. If they didn't do the homework there, they wouldn't do homework that day because there's no light at the house, because there's 10 of them living in a 10 by 10 that got flooded. It made us pause. And that question from the leader of the soccer program about what breaks your heart, that breaks my heart. And when I take it back here, and I'm looking at people at the light when I'm driving, and I'm asking myself, what kind of country are we? Where we have people on the street corner who don't have food. Yeah, there will always be people trying to play the system. But on the off chance that the person sitting in the street corner is not one of those, what are we doing about it? And so I want to thank everyone for having afforded us this unbelievable opportunity. And this is just a testament of what kind of community we have at Southminster. Thank you.
Okay, last but not least, I have written a poem, and it is about the word sawubona, which is an Afrikaans word that means I see you. So, yes. Sawubona, I see you. Can you see me? Then why did you pass me by when I waved? Are you too stuck in your own world to see those around you? Again, can you see me? Oh, now you can. Did you see the pain on the faces of those who would die to be on American soil? What I really see is you not recognizing your privilege, the privilege to be here, the privilege to not acknowledge the world around us. The time is here to wake up and believe that we can create a better world, a world where no children goes hungry, a world where no child doesn't have a bed to sleep on. I see you. I see you wanting to create a change. But the first change is you. Sawabona. Amen.